Good evening all, and welcome. Tonight's video has been graciously sponsored by Surfshark. It's a VPN service that makes online privacy easy and attainable by encrypting all your internet traffic that is sent to and from your devices and ensures your IP address remains hidden from everyone so no one can see what you're doing online. On top of that, they block ads, trackers, malware, phishing attempts, and you can use it on all your devices at once. It's pretty awesome. I've been using it for about a month now, and it works amazingly. It's super easy to use and set up and makes your online life a hell of a lot more comfortable. One thing I specifically love about it is how it protects you from targeted ads, so the internet knows less about you, and how I can also get geo-blocked entertainment. Because Netflix UK and USA have some different things, so hopping between the two, I can get the best stuff. Not to mention it's super affordable. If you sign up with the discount code Mortis, you get 83% off. There's a link at the top of the description if you would like to check it out for yourself. I really do recommend it. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. Around a year, maybe a year and a half ago, I was using an app called Whisper to help me make friends after getting out of high school. I was 19 at the time and had a really nice boyfriend. I had used Whisper before and actually made 2 to 3 friends during my senior year, and also found a friend of mine's boyfriend cheating using Whisper. So safe to say this app can be a handful sometimes. I put out a whisper asking for someone to talk to, and of course I got a ton of replies but couldn't get to all of them. But I messaged some of the more interesting ones back. This guy named Jack started messaging me and seemed really nice. He said he was 23 and lived 8 minutes from my house. If you used Whisper, you'd know that you'd be able to search by area or go into a general section and see thousands of whispers being uploaded that you could reply to. You can also send photos instantly after 4 messages. As soon as we messaged 4 times, he sent me a selfie, and I was surprised but didn't really respond to it. Jack was telling me how he worked for a towing company in a neighboring town, how he would have to go use the interstate to go places and all that. At the time I didn't have a job as my mother was sick, and so I would use my laptop out in the kitchen at the table to watch streams and play some games in case she needs me at any point. I remember watching my friends stream, talking to my friends, and generally just having a good time, until I got a text from Jack. Now I never gave him my address, never even really explained where I lived, and I did not mention the church, the interstate, nor any landmarks near me. But he texted me saying, "Hey, look out your window." I thought maybe something happened on the interstate, but then I remembered I never told him how close it was to me. But I assumed maybe he just guessed I lived nearby. I see a tow truck right outside my house with a car that broke down. My blood ran cold. He was at the truck, waving. Also very inappropriate while working, but that's besides the point. I started shaking. Due to having some bad anxiety, I ended up having an anxiety attack. How did he know where I lived? I replied by asking that exact same question, and he said, "Well, you're home, aren't you?" I didn't respond. I went back to the stream I had up and started typing to my friends, freaking out to them and causing them to panic as well. I didn't want to call the cops because my cousin is one, and so is one of my friends. As soon as anything was heard about it, I thought I'd be in deep trouble for it, so I ignored him. Then he sent me a picture of his member on the app. I was disgusted. I deleted the post and messages from Whisper and blocked him. The next day, an unknown number messaged me. I figured it was him. I ignored it, and then I got a restricted phone call and answered. Big mistake. I was out in the garage with my cat, and this voice on the other end said, "Hey, you look so sexy right now. Want to go for ice cream down the road?" I looked out the door that was next to me and I see him in his car driving slowly, keeping his eyes locked on me. I jumped up and ran inside after hanging up, running to my room so I could feel comforted by my blankets in bed. I was petrified. I got a job soon after that at Subway, and he would come in and start harassing me, texting me on random numbers since I would block them all, and I felt paranoid all the time, knowing he seemed to know where I was at all times. One day, my now ex-boyfriend ended up texting him, as I had given him his original number that I had just in case anything happened since I blocked it. Furiously telling him to leave me alone, stop talking to me and everything. I never got a message back after that, but I'm still paranoid he's watching me. So Jack, let's not meet. I'm a guy from the UK. I live in a town in Wales, albeit not the little villages most people imagine. My town is a proper holiday destination along the coast of Wales. This isn't relevant to the story, but I just thought I would give everyone some context. So it started when I was around 15 years old, 8 years ago. I was dating a girl from about 2 towns over. I would usually get the train to hers and back. However, this one night her family weren't supposed to be home, and we were kind of being watched by her brother, who was about 20 and pretty chill. The plan was to stay the night. We were up late playing on the Wii, but her parents unexpectedly came home. I never got along with her mother, and the whole thing kind of got heated, and I was kicked out the house and told I could not stay over. It was about 2 a.m, and I didn't want to call my own parents in worry of waking them. My mother is a very strict woman, so I began the long trudge home. It was roughly an hour and a quarter worth of walking, so I was expecting to be home around 4:30. So I was walking along the concrete part above the beach, and I stopped after about a half hour of walking, as there is a public toilet which is kind of run down, but also open 24 hours to those desperate, which I was. I was expecting it to be empty, or just have a homeless dude sleeping in it, but I was wrong. There was a guy using the urinal. This guy looked to be in his mid to late 50s, a little on the overweight side, but not morbidly. He had grey, messy-ish hair, but other than that, he looked pretty normal. He definitely didn't look homeless. I remember he made a quick joke about something, but I don't remember what. I politely laughed, did my business, and left. After about 15 more minutes of walking, the weather had gotten pretty bad. It started to rain heavily, and the wind was picking up. I seem to remember this was around November time, so it was pretty cold. I'm walking, and a car drives by, beeps and pulls over just in front of me. I had assumed it was someone I know, but couldn't think who. I got in the car and the dude from the toilets was inside. He asked me where I was heading, and I told him. He said that was a long walk, and I couldn't be expected to walk all that way in this weather, and he offered me a lift. In hindsight, I probably should have refused, but the weather was bad, and at the time he wasn't giving off any weird vibes. The drive took about 15 minutes, I think, maybe 20. The more I was in the car with him, the more I started to get vibes that there was something off. He was telling me his best friend was a 14-year-old lad who stays over at his place a lot, and they drink together, and if I ever wanted to join in, I was welcome to. He was asking me some really invasive questions as well. I don't fully remember what they were. I just remember it's not the kind of questions you ask to someone that you're giving a simple lift home to. Anyway, we got to the street around the corner from my place, and I asked him to just drop me off there. I told him my house wasn't accessible by the road, and that I would just walk the rest of the way home. He gave me his number and told him to ring him when I got back to my house safely, as he wanted to make sure I got home okay. I asked him what his name was. At this point he knew my full name, and he just said, Pete. Pete what? My phone wants a surname. he wouldn't tell me. He just kept saying, "Just Pete." I later found out that Pete was a fake name too. Anyway, I got into my house and texted him just to let him know I was home safe. It was probably a bad decision, but back then I was full of bad decisions. The next day came and I was expecting everything to go back to normal. But it didn't, because I stupidly gave Pete my number when I texted him. I started to get texts from him every morning, basically just saying good morning and wishing me well. I replied to the first few, and then started ignoring them. So that's when he tried calling me. Every single evening. I would ignore most of his calls, but he would often repeatedly ring until I answer. He was sending me these texts, inviting me over to his house for some drinks, and he kept telling me he'd just gotten himself a pool table and wanted me to come and play with him. He was telling me a story of a friend he was playing pool with, the 14-year-old one I was talking about, and accidentally let slip the guy called him John. I collared him on this and said, "I thought your name was Pete." "Oh no, my friend's name is John." "You just said your friend called you John, and you told me your friend was called Tom." "Oh, well, some people call me John. It's like a nickname." He hesitated saying this too, and it clicked in my mind that he was lying to me. I kept refusing, but he kept asking. After a while, my mum wanted to know who this dude who kept texting me was. I told her, and she rang him herself from her phone and told him that if he carried on texting and ringing me, she would be calling the police. I didn't get any more texts from him after that, but it didn't end there. I had a routine, you see, and he knew it. I always walked my dog at 4:30 every afternoon and played with her for 40 minutes on the field at the end of my street, just near where he had dropped me off. I had started to notice his car pulling up there within 5 minutes of me getting there with my dog. He had tinted windows, but I would always notice the car lights were on and left on, and the engine was always running. I recognized his car and would occasionally notice the car door open and a large flash from that direction, as if someone were taking pictures. I started changing the time I walked my dog, but he would eventually figure it out and start showing up either earlier or later to coincide with me walking her. This went on for months. I never mentioned it to anyone, but one day it just stopped. He stopped pulling up on the side of the field, and I never saw his car again. No text messages or phone calls, it just stopped. I ended up getting a new phone after about a year, and had that for another 2. I dug out my old empty phone when I was around 18 to 19, after the aforementioned dog passed away. I had some old pictures and videos of her on that phone and wanted to transfer them over to my PC so that I always had them. I turned on the phone, which had been off for several years now, and still had the old SIM card in it. That's when I got my final message from Pete. It was an old one and was about 14 months old. It said something along the lines of, "Hi, I know we haven't spoken in a while, but I've just thought you should know that over New Year's I was diagnosed with an illness and I've been told I don't have long left. You were such a good friend in the short time we knew each other. I live at," and he sent me his address, "and would really appreciate it if you could come around just so that I could have one last chat. I've got some beers. If you want to stay the night, you can. Just drop me a line if you want to come round so that I can get everything ready for you. See you soon." No idea if Pete/John was genuinely ill or just trying to lure me to his house. I've never been to the address he sent me and never responded to him or heard from him since. I didn't reply to him, and that was the last I heard from the guy. It certainly had a big impact on me during those years. I don't know if he's gone, but I do know I never would want to meet him again. This story starts around the fall of 2017. I was walking back down to work from lunch when I passed this girl and noticed she got up and began to walk behind me. She took a different route and didn't follow me, and a few days later it happened again, but this time she was following me. I assumed she wasn't following me at the time because where my office building is situated, you have to go up a set of stairs and pass a few other buildings, and she did not follow me into my building. After a while, I noticed we took the same train home. A lot of the time she would be watching me. When we made eye contact, she'd look away. Then she'd continue looking when she thought I wasn't looking. There's a Whole Foods across from my office. I went there for lunch a few times during the week. I started seeing this girl sitting in the window for lunch, and she would almost always get up as soon as I left and walked the way I did. Around this time, I began seeing her more frequently. During lunchtime or when I got the metro, she was almost always there. After a few months of this, I started noticing that she would get off at the same station as me sometimes. Sometimes she would walk the same way as me. Once I got to my place, she would always pass but never followed me up to the entrance. During this time, I started receiving phone calls at work from random phone numbers that, at the time, I assumed were spam. There would either be silence on the end, or the person would hang up immediately. I also started receiving fake Facebook requests from people I already knew or were already on my friends list. December of 2017 comes by. By this time, I'm not going to Whole Foods as often. If she gets off at the same station as me, I go into a restaurant or go shopping for groceries before I go home. Around this time, an old friend I went to high school with contacts me, kind of out the blue. She said she wanted to follow me on Instagram. We texted a few times and I accepted her follow request. She contacts me again about a month later from a different number, but this time she's texting me frequently. I'm talking about every day/every other day. I'm not one to be mean or show when I'm annoyed too often, but after months of this, when she starts asking me if she's texting me too frequently, I don't hesitate to tell her that she could lay off a bit. She stops for a week or so, then begins texting me frequently again. This whole ordeal should have sent up red flags for several reasons. During this time, she would ask me so many random questions, like when you would do when you're trying to get to know someone. She would ask for selfies, which I declined to as I don't like taking pictures of myself, and I would tell her that there are plenty of pictures of me on Facebook. She would ask what I'm doing on the weekends, and the names of my friends on occasion, which I wouldn't tell her because I thought it was weird that she'd want to know my friends' names. I only sent her a couple of videos of fun things I'd do, but that was it. August 2018 rolls around. I'm still seeing Creepy Girl everywhere during the week. I get pulled into my boss's office, and he says that a few co-workers received fake screenshots from Facebook of me talking badly about them. Now, I've never posted on Facebook and would never talk crap about my co-workers on social media. I don't have a grudge with anyone, nor do I know of anyone who has a problem with me. I'm a fairly easygoing guy. I managed to clear things up with everyone involved and still had my job. Of course, my friend is still texting me fairly frequently, and I tell her what happened a few days later when I get home from work. I tell her I don't want to go too much into it, but she keeps badgering me for details. When I finally let it spill, I was going to bed, and she got the message. The more I thought about all the times she texted me, the more uneasy I got. Something that she said just didn't make sense, especially from the way I remember it. We had kept in touch over the years, just not as frequently, and we hadn't touched bases for a while before I heard from her in December. A couple of weeks later, I decided to reach out to my friend on Instagram, but the Instagram she last messaged me from wasn't there. However, there was still an Instagram for her that I followed, and that followed me back. I reached out to her and asked her what a phone number was. The phone number was completely different, and it turns out she was never the one texting me, nor did she request following me on Instagram. I tracked the number, and it turns out to be from one of those fake phone number apps. I requested to be blocked from the service, and I never heard from my friend again. After talking about it with my brother and a few friends, I'm almost certain it was the girl that'd been following me. These things only started after she appeared. The phone calls to my office, the fake Facebook friend requests, and a few days before I was pulled aside by my boss, my friend texted me and told me she had a weird feeling about me and wanted to make sure I was okay. I just thought she was being weird at the time and tried not to think too much of it. This whole ordeal is really scary when I looked back on it, because I sent videos of myself and my address at one point. My friend even confirmed a post my brother made with pictures he tagged me on Facebook. I was texting a stranger for 8 months about my life, and they also apparently have access to my Facebook page. I still see this girl since she obviously works in the same area as me. She doesn't follow me around as much, but when she does see me on the metro, she always watches me or sits somewhere she'll be able to make eye contact with me. I'm always careful now if anyone texts me from an unrecognizable phone number, and I'm just paranoid. I know this story might seem a bit all over the place, especially with the conclusion I came to of the girl posing as my friend, but I had to get this off my chest. So creepy girl who's been following me, staring at me, and most likely catfished me. I don't ever want to meet you again. I really don't know why I didn't suspect my friend wasn't really her at the start. She obviously had my phone number, and she knew my mom and brother's name, where I went to college, and the fact that we went to high school together. So you can see why it was very convincing. When I was 15, Ray William Johnson was the most subscribed YouTube channel out there. I feel it necessary to say now that he was not the YouTuber that this story is about, but I feel it's important to include it for context. Doing some research before sharing this, he was the first YouTube channel to reach 5 million subscribers, so he was very popular at the time. In his show, he reviewed viral videos, and as a teenager, it was one of my favorite things to watch. Every week, he picked one subscriber video to provide the comment question of the week, to which his subscribers would provide responses in the comment section. A friend and I thought we had a great question featuring her new baby iguana to ask, and sent it in every week after filming it. By the 4th or 5th week, our video was selected and aired on that week's show. In hindsight, there definitely wasn't that much traffic coming into my account, but at the time it really felt like it. I had 30-some messages in my message box at the time, and quite a few comments on the original video. I can confidently say, let's not meet to anyone in that comment section, garnering such classy comments such as, I'd tap the both of you at the same time. I would do both, and the iguana can watch. My friend at the time was 13 years old, and my message box did not look much different. Now as a teenager with low self-esteem, I was pleased with a lot of this new attention. I was actually taking the time to respond to a lot of my messages, ignoring the disgusting ones, and thanking people for congratulating me on getting picked, and occasionally starting up a conversation with some internet strangers. One of the most common questions I got asked after this video was, how old are you? And of course I offered up that information readily. One specific person sticks out because he continued talking to me. Constantly. Every day. I would have a new message from him, and I would respond. He was just chatting. Just being nice, I thought. He had a YouTube account, small, but had a couple of thousand subscribers. Having had 11 myself, all of which being my friends, I thought it was so cool that his channel was successful. He asked me how old I was. I told him I was 15, and he told me he was 21. It was initially quite tame conversation, but after a few weeks he asked me for my phone number. I was naive. I gave it to him because he was nice, and he didn't live anywhere near me. From what he told me, we lived several states away. Then the texting started, and he tried calling me. Around here is where I started getting creeped out. He began talking about wanting to meet me. Now, at this point, I'd seen To Catch a Predator in school, and I started getting somewhat suspicious. I never gave him more information than the state I lived in, and my first name. That seemed innocent enough. But he started getting flirty and creepy, and generally uncomfortable to talk to. I slowly stopped responding, ignored the phone calls and said I was busy. Then he found my social media accounts and started talking to me there. I told him that I had gotten a boyfriend, which was a lie, but he still sent me some generally discomforting messages, especially looking back. This guy made me so uncomfortable that even thinking about it now or seeing his username makes me feel nauseated and tense. The message that really got me was one that finally scared me enough, and the one I actually can remember after all those years. It said, "I'm coming to Ohio, and I'm gonna find you. And when I do, I'm gonna hug you so hard I'm gonna squeeze until your eyes pop out your little head." Smiley face. I never told my parents, but I was lucky enough to be able to get my phone number changed. I started getting paranoid that he would find me, checking the locks, closing the curtains. I removed him from some social media, changed my username and display names to make myself harder to find, because, I was a teenager and my priorities were to be in contact with my actual friends at all times. Surprisingly, it got quiet for a while, and slowly I gained some feelings of safety back. I actually even started a new YouTube channel at the recommendation of some friends and started putting myself out there again, doing more media productions which I love, and garnering a small following of about 1,200 strangers. A few years down the road, I was starting freshman year of college. I had just turned 18, and wouldn't you know, he found me again. He followed me on all my social media, sent me messages again, and posted some comments on my old YouTube channel all at once. I felt sick. I remembered all the creepy messages and unsettling feelings, and just general breathlessness I had when he started telling me he would find me and that he was coming for me. I had a brief panic attack before swiftly blocking him on everything. My profile pictures were me at my new college, wearing the gear and everything. I would have been significantly easier to find now, and I knew that. I hardly made any friends that first year of college. I didn't leave my room much after that happened, and I never went to parties. I scarcely made any friends, and every so often I remember the experience and get sick. This is one of those times. I've since graduated. I've moved far away with my boyfriend. I still check my locks and curtains aggressively every night, sometimes 3 to 4 times a night, even if I'm sure I've done it. What I'll never understand is how a grown man at 21 would be interested in a 15-year-old girl, and especially still be interested after several years. The entire memory repulses me. He still posts to that YouTube channel, and all I can think about is how he tried to get me when I was a minor. He was a predator. He took away my sense of safety, and up to this point he's certainly on my top 10 people with whom I wish to never have an encounter with again. I'm a woman in my early 20s who had, at the time, long, bright pink hair all the way down my back. Because of this, I'm very easy to spot in crowds and from afar. My best friend and I were traveling the French and Italian Riviera. Before going, my overly protective parents had been ranting about Taken, the movie, which only seemed laughable to me. We had been traveling for 6 days at that point, exploring Monaco, Menton, and Ventimiglia by foot. We had mostly had an amazing journey. The creepiest things we had encountered were so far catcallers and men that both looked and acted like they had never seen a woman before. But it was all fine. The thing that happened on our last night, however, really shook us to the core, given how we had just let our guard down since the city of Menton had turned out to feel so safe. It felt like this event came completely out of nowhere. The false confidence that made us feel like we could deal with anything could have really put us in danger that night. So to begin, the evening went like it had since we arrived. After adventuring all morning and then slacking at the beach all afternoon, we had made ourselves pretty and presentable again to have a little dinner by the beach promenade. After some cocktails and wine, we were both pretty buzzed, and we had agreed that the first thing we would order at the wine bar we were planning on going to next would be a big bottle of water to share. We had been going to this wine bar for 3 nights in a row. It was situated in one of the busier and more touristy streets where most shops were kept open till midnight. We walked there from the promenade giggling and having a great time as usual. After being greeted by the server, who was happy to see us again, we got ourselves seats at a table outside of the bar facing the busy street, where we could enjoy the late evening breeze as well as people watch. We were pretty used to men staring at us at that point, both young and old. I had developed pretty good tunnel vision while outside, and I tended to not look directly at men unless they were standing directly in my way or if I accidentally space out or something. After we had ordered our wine, cheese, and water bottle, my friend went to the bathroom inside. I sat facing the street and I was checking my phone, and when I randomly looked up, I met the eyes of a bald man in the midst of passing by. He was very tall, wore dark glasses, and blue and white striped nice-looking shirt. He also wore some expensive-looking dark leather shoes, and had a clock that also looked quite pricey around his wrist. In other words, he looked pretty anonymous at the Riviera, nicely dressed, but also kind of strange as he wore white socks in that temperature. We got eye contact as he was walking by, and then stopped for a second while holding the gaze, and then started walking again, only to look right back at me. Naturally, I looked away, and then he seemingly left, and I did not think any more of it. After my friend had returned from the bathroom, and we had tasted the different sorts of cheese and Italian prosciuttos, I looked up to see him standing there again, leaning on a wall across the street. 15 minutes must have passed, but once again I caught him looking at us with his phone aimed in our direction, held upright, as if he was taking pictures. I started getting the creeps, so I just casually asked my friend, who sat with her back towards him, if she had noticed him before also. She declined, and I tried to explain that he seemed to be lurking at us, but that at least he must have been aware that we'd seen him. Thinking that would be enough to make him lose interest, I told her to act like nothing and just forget about it, while we would continue to enjoy our last night at the Riviera. Every now and then, however, I would catch him staring at us, only to then nonchalantly start texting on his phone, or look away. Something just really irked me about how he was trying so hard to pretend he was doing everything else. I finally let my friend know that he was still there, and she started freaking out more visibly than me, turning around all the time very obviously for him to see. The man started pacing around, picking up the phone to his ear without speaking. I could tell there was no light on the screen, and I was starting to become not only uncomfortable but kind of angry too, so I stared directly back at him, just to make goddamn sure that I knew he was watching us. At this point, I picked up my phone irritated, pretended to take pictures of the cheese platter, but actually of him just for proof in case he was trying anything strange. More than an hour had passed at this point, and the tiny doubt that I had that he maybe was just waiting for someone started to diminish. In just an hour, most of the shops and restaurants would be closing, including the wine bar we sat in. He definitely wasn't waiting for anyone, and I knew that eventually we would have to leave for the hotel. But what if he were to follow us? What if that's what he was waiting for? Eventually he walked up the street and had seemed to disappear. I felt relieved, but did not put my guard down yet, and just 10 minutes later he came walking back down the street again, pretending like nothing happened. Now we were both starting to get more scared, and we saw how the street became less and less crowded and how shops were starting to close down. The man looked at us from further down the street, and when he seemed to have become aware that we noticed him again, he vanished into a shop, waited for a few minutes, and then came out again without having bought anything, looking at us like before. We were really questioning what to do at this point, as well as what he wanted. As mentioned, we were both pretty buzzed from before, and after a few more wine glasses, my brain could not work as fast as usual. The man then walked further down the street and stood beside an ice cream bar. He was there for 15 minutes without buying anything nor leaving, just occasionally turning around to look at us. We were starting to struggle to keep an eye on him, because as I mentioned, he looked quite anonymous. Me, on the other hand, with my long, bright pink hair, made me only the more visible. Me and my friends started wondering if we should talk to someone, like the lady in the bar, but feared we would just sound paranoid and weird. As we could no longer see the man, we decided to pay and leave quickly before he returned. If he suddenly appeared, we would just call for the closest group of guys to help us. We began power walking down the street, looking behind us and everywhere in case he would appear. I suddenly felt much more sober due to the stress, and decided it would be more smart to take another street to the hotel instead of the lit-up and touristy one where we had seen him waiting. After all, he had clearly noticed we were scared, and by all logic, we would follow that street. So we quickly ran down that other street and a few blocks down, back to the lit-up one. I stopped for a second to catch my breath and looked up the street with the ice cream bar, and he was indeed standing there in the middle of the street, looking up towards the wine bar we had just left, kind of walking around to look from other angles. I then knew we had not been paranoid at all, and he had been deliberately waiting for us. He had been so determined he had been waiting for more than 2 hours. Just this effort seemed too much for a random creep. My friend turned around too and saw him and freaked out. We started running down the street as close to the shops as possible, in front of people so it would block the sight of us if he turned around. It was about a 15-minute walk to our hotel, but we got there so much quicker, always turning around. It honestly felt like the scariest moment of my life. As we started running, I started thinking, but what if he's not alone? What if he had chosen us and had been messaging someone along with our location? Maybe he'd seen us days before going to the same bar and had worked out our schedules, and if so, how long had he been watching us? To say the least, I barely slept that night, and I felt so thankful that I had even noticed him lurking. Perhaps I'm overreacting, but my logic and all the weirdness around this makes me feel like we had just barely escaped something potentially horrifying. Let me start by setting the scene. On December 3rd, 2014, my birthday, I'm preparing to leave my office to begin my birthday celebrations when I get called into my boss's office. Chris, I'm sorry to tell you this, on this day especially, but business is bad and we're gonna have to let you go. I'm stunned. I leave the office making a vague remark that I'll collect my stuff in a few days. I jump on the subway to collect my girlfriend who worked at a human rights law firm. She finished her day and meets me. But inside the usual hugs and kisses, she keeps her distance. I know that when she does this, it's because she lost a case, so I make small talk as we hit the street. Stopping suddenly, she turns to me and explains, "Sorry, Chris, I can't do this anymore. It's not you, it's me." Before I get a chance to answer, she hails a cab and off she goes. Wow. Birthday. No job, no love of my life, all in the space of 2 hours. This situation needs alcohol, and badly. I reached the bar where I was meeting my friends for my birthday celebration. I got drunk very quickly. Copious amounts of red wine, chased with beer and shots. I argued with everyone, insulted a few, and was politely asked to leave by a steroid-infused doorman. I found myself in the middle of London at midnight, staggering home. By 2 a.m. I reached halfway to my house when my phone buzzed. A withheld number. In my self-pitied filled state, I thought it was my girlfriend. "Darling?" "I ain't your darling, you scumbag." I stood there, looking at my phone. "Who is this?" "You'll find out soon enough." I cursed and staggered another 90 minutes home. My legs had had enough. I hit the floor and almost crawled into bed and passed out. The next afternoon I woke up, remembered in fits and starts what had happened. I got really angry, then began the process of finding a new job and extracting my belongings from my old job and my ex-girlfriend. Then just before midnight my phone rings, another withheld number. Amanda?" "This isn't her, scumbag." "Who is this?" "You'll know soon enough." I work as a salesman in technology, raising money for startups, so I have a wide and deep network, but I'm also very private. I have a small family and few trusted friends. I rang around and asked if anyone was getting calls. No one. This was the start of a very exhausting 6 weeks. The calls would come in at night, sometimes early evening, sometimes early morning. I would answer the ones in the evening, as a lot of my contacts and clients used withheld numbers. The ones in the morning would just go to voicemail. At first it was the same few words, the word scumbag, a few cusses added for good measure, and the voice was male, but sometimes a female would be first and then it would be passed to the male. I recorded the voicemails and played them at the local police, but as there was no direct threat, or I could not identify the person, sadly, there was very little that they could do. Eventually things came to a head when I started getting emails. "Watch out for LinkedIn contact info, folks," stating in graphic detail what they were going to do to me. This time the police could do a bit more about their tracing, but they couldn't find a location in the UK. The scum were using anonymous email tech. Finally one evening, in the middle of snow-filled January at about 8:34 in the evening, the phone rings, another withheld number, and I answer as I'm waiting for clients to confirm a new assignment. "Hello, scumbag. Did you get the emails?" "Yeah, I did." And I think you really should quit while you're ahead." I spoke very calmly. "Hey, scumbag, I ain't finished with you yet." I cut my stalker off and explained clearly. "Listen, my soon-to-be spending his short-assed life in an unbelievably incredible amount of pain. Let me tell you what's going to happen now. Instead of you harassing me, I'm going to hunt you, and then I'm going to capture you and your girl, and then I'm going to cook your girl as part of a special enchilada dish. Then we're going to eat her and wash her down with a nice Argentinian red. Then, my friend, I'm going to make a dessert out of you. You see, my amateur stalker friend, I'm going to go full Hannibal Lecter on you. Now, the only way to stop these culinary adventures of mine is to stop your ramblings right now. So make a decision." There was a long silence, then a squeak. "Sorry." And then the line cut. I haven't heard from my would-be stalker friend in a long time. Love to have you over for dinner. I'll even provide the wine. In any case, let's not meet. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I do hope that you enjoyed tonight's tales. Certainly an interesting bunch. Be sure to be safe out there and not let a stalker ruin your life. Maybe even take steps like our final story to try and outdo them. In any case, you know what to do if you enjoyed tonight's video. Also, we hit 3,000 followers on Twitter and Instagram. Hooray! We actually went a bit over on Instagram. I think you guys must use that more. So thank you for that. So we're gonna do the winning in 2 videos. I think what we'll do, I've been trying to think the best way to do this. I was gonna say everyone leave their Twitter handle or Instagram handle as a comment, but then I realized that if you did that and you didn't want to share it, you know, then people might be like, oh no, I don't want random strangers following me. So yeah, there's that. So I'm kind of in between that or just someone leaving a comment, but then I run the risk of the person who leaves the comment, if they win, because I'd have to ask them what their handles are, they can just quickly follow me, and it's like they've never really entered anyway. So between those two, I honestly and genuinely think the most sensible and fair way would probably be to just everyone comment their handle down below, and if they really don't feel comfortable when the competition's over, they can just go back and delete their comment. I'd really appreciate your input on this. Tell me what you think down below if you think that's a good idea. I think it's probably the fairest way. We do that probably in 2 videos time, just to give you enough time to prepare, I suppose. And we'll have the competition open for 2-3 days, just in case you don't watch that frequently. And yeah, then 2 winners are selected, which I'll screen record who won and post it in the intro, just so you can see and it's fair. And yeah, then I'll get in touch with whoever won, and we can get prizes sent out. And now that we've hit 3,000, it's time to hit 4. And I think to make it even sweeter, we'll have 4 winners. 4 winners. I think that'd be fair. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thank you everyone for watching the video. Sorry for the long competition explanation rambling. And if you do need a VPN, really, this VPN Surfshark is really good. I do recommend it. Alright then guys, well for now it's time for me to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.